Okay, guys, a few thoughts on Sir Anthony Eden. Enoch Powell famously said, "All political careers end in failure," and the case of Eden is probably the most spectacular example of it. Um, when I wrote about Eden, I actually talked about him as a tragedy in one act. The one act is Suez. Tragedy is, of course, to overdo it. He lost power, but it was in a way a political tragedy. He's got all there. Hubris. He wins the general election of '55, having finally got to the office he'd wanted for years. He's master of all he surveys. Then comes the Deus Ex Machina, the God moment, the moment where the gods intervene and change everything. NASA nationalizes Suez. And then Nemesis. Suez goes pear shaped. Eden's health collapses. Eden goes. Um, Prosaically, actually, Eden fits another pattern. And that's number two, who did long live number twos who made very bad prime ministers, or at least unsuccessful ones. So Balfour, who succeeded Lord the Great Victorian Titan Lord Salisbury. Everyone agrees Balfour was rubbish. Then Neville Chamberlain, of course, waited for years for the top job. Great Chancellor, but failed. I think most people agree at the top job. Later on, Gordon Brown might fit that pattern as well. In the case of Eden, I think it does kind of work. 279 days is all he lasted in the end in number 10. And the question is not so much why did it go so wrong, because Suez is broadly the answer to that, but why did it all go so wrong with Suez? A couple of things about Eden are worth bearing in mind. One is his background. It sounds like a conventional Tory tough background. He's from the Grey family, actually, the great Earl Grey monument. Looking forward to going back down that part of the world, I'll tell you. Eton, Christchurch, Oxford, reads like the standard format. Well, politicians that had a bit more about them than the lot today. Eton, Oxford, and not much else. Well, for Eden, of course, like the three prime ministers who are kind of his generation, Eden, Macmillan, and Attlee, they are all in many ways formed by the First World War. All of them were deeply affected by Eden, probably more so than most, in fact, by both wars, to tell the truth. Eden lost two brothers in the First World War, one in 1914, another at Jutland. One at Jutland was only 16 years old, so he was a midshipman. Another was interned in Germany for the course of the war. You probably know you got the Military Cross for basically rescuing a wounded sergeant. Didn't mention it in his memoirs, of course, because the chap doesn't like to boast. The Second World War attached Eden, personally, I think it affected Eden personally as well. He lost his son just before he was flying off to Potsdam. He was in the RAF in Burma. His marriage collapsed the year after. By 1950, they were divorced. He remains the only divorced prime minister. He got two big things out of the two world wars, though. By 1918, Eden was the youngest major in the British Army. The collapse of his marriage meant his marriage to Clarissa, a young relative of Churchill's. Happily, the oldest surviving prime ministerial spouse. She was much younger than Eden. But I think Eden's life was formed by two world wars in many ways. Christchurch, by the way, you read languages, and there's an irony here, given that Suez finishes him, because one was Persian and the other was Arabic. One was starred first, of course. The main thing to understand about Eden, though, was he was the future once. He was a rising star right from the start. He'd been Austen Chamberlain's parliamentary private secretary. He was Minder to Sir John Simon when he was foreign secretary. He became the youngest foreign secretary in the 20th century at age 38. And when he resigned over Italy, not Germany, the resignation actually did him good. It gave him the reputation of being anti-appeasement, which served him very well when Churchill was in number 10, when he got rid of Halifax, and Eden was then in the Foreign Office and was one of the key members of that wartime government, probably the second most important Conservative after Churchill himself. And like Attlee and maybe Bevin, one of the few men in that government who could pick an argument with him and actually win. The problem for Eden was he'd already long been established as the coming man, the number two, helped by his good looks. So he was probably the best looking prime minister, certainly the most dapper, I think. But he waited a long, long, long time. And when Churchill comes back in 51, Eden's back in the Foreign Office, and everyone knows they're kind of waiting for Churchill to go, and Churchill won't go. Even when he has his stroke, he won't leave. Now, part of that, I think, is the old man just clinging on because he wants to and he doesn't want to let go. Part of it may well be, though, that he didn't really think Eden was up to it. He told Lord Swinton that he regretted really making effectively Eden his appointed successor. Swinton told Churchill that anybody would be better than Anthony, and also said he would be the worst prime minister since Lord North. And given that Lord North was the one in the 18th century lost America, that's a fairly unimpressive forecast. Churchill's doctor believed Eden's health would not stand up to it. But cometh the hour, it looked as if Eden was master of all he surveyed. Big win, cynical giveaway budget, bitterly divided Labour Party, majority of 58, looked great on telly, hugely popular, star quality. Eden, it seemed, was in command of all he surveyed. One of his ministers, Peter Thornycroft, would later observe the following. I think it's important to remember how overpowering Anthony's position was. He was not the only Prime Minister, but he was considered to be the greatest Prime Minister that we'd had in a long time, and the greatest foreign policy expert we'd had in a long time. It's very difficult to challenge a Prime Minister, but to challenge a Prime Minister on foreign policy, if that's his real strength, is very difficult indeed. The problem was that Eden wasn't really up to the job, and the real problem was Eden the man. He ran on a short, I think not terribly stable fuse. His temper was legendary as his irritability. His private secretaries were actually afraid to bring him bad news because he would fling a tantrum at them. His health remained an issue. His parliamentary private secretary, Robert Carr, believed his gallbladder operation in 53, an operation that went wrong, permanently undermined his health. By 56, Eden was heavily medicated, wasn't sleeping, and his nerves were shredded. And they didn't rate him. Rab Butler, notably indiscreet, famously told reporters that Eden was, quote, the best Prime Minister we have got. He was notoriously thin-skinned, especially towards the critical press, and the press were very critical, including Randolph Churchill, incidentally. And in cabinet, he alienated people as well. The famous phrase came about the smack-a-firm government, and it came about because of a lack of smack-a-firm government. He didn't have a habit of doing this to make a point. I mean this, showing again his irritability. But what it became symbolic of was actually his lack of grip. His colleagues turned on him. His brittle nerves, his interference, his inability to chair a decent cabinet, and really, it got a bit pathetic. By the middle of 56, they're actually passing notes around, during cabinet, like naughty little year nines or something. Some doubted Eden had really only a grasp of foreign policy. Ironically, foreign policy would prove the problem. He couldn't let go was one of the problems. When Macmillan was Foreign Secretary, he complained about his constant little notes and ringing up all the time. One day, Selwyn Lloyd, Macmillan's successor at the Foreign Office, was telephoned on 30 separate occasions. Therefore, cometh the crisis, Eden had very little support, very little sympathy within his own cabinet. And the truth is, most people thought he'd lost the plot. Peter Hennessy, again, how much I love Peter Hennessy's books. I'll flag him up at the end of this. Quotes Sir Dermot Boyle, the Chief of Air Staff, the Prime Minister has gone bananas. Evelyn Shuckburgh, former Parliamentary Private Secretary to Eden at the Foreign Office, thought, quotes, AE has gone off his head. And he kind of had. The root of Suez was the appeasement analogy. For him, Nasser was Hitler, or Mussolini, with his throat on our windpipe. And this led also, with a combination of the belief that Britain was still the strong foreign policy actor in its own right, Eden down the disastrous path, a calamitous path, launching a brilliant but lunatic plot by alienating the Americans, for Christ's sake, the most important ally we have, and frankly, then being made by his own cabinet to pull the plug on his own operation. He didn't go straight, he went for a rescue, came back, was told his health was shot. Clarissa always insisted he went because of his health. The truth is his political capital was really gone by then. It's a horrible thing to say, but actually Noel Coward, if you've heard of Noel Coward, great playwright, songwriter, etc., friend of Eden's, wit. Coward said when Anthony went, "Poor Anthony has resigned, given up, and is on his way to New Zealand, a tragic figure who had been cast in a star part well above his capabilities."